All right, good to see everybody tonight for Bible study. It's Wednesday night, and we are doing virtual online Bible study tonight. And thank you for joining us on Facebook and on Zoom. And let's start with a prayer. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this evening. We offer ourselves to you, ask forgiveness of our sins, and just ask that you would put us in right relationship with you. Teach us tonight, grow us tonight, help us to understand your word better. Let it motivate us and inspire us to be the people you want us to be. In Jesus' name, amen. So we're going to be in 2 Samuel chapter 19 tonight, and we're going to talk about fear tonight and how to overcome fear and some of the stuff that we deal with on a regular basis. There is so much fear, so many stories about overcoming fear in the Bible. You can pretty much go story by story, page by page in the Old Testament, and you'll find that. So it is, how do we address that? How do we function in a world filled with fear? And so I looked up some acronyms for fear. What does it stand for? Best way for us to understand it. One of them was false evidence appearing real. Okay, so false evidence appearing real. Another acronym was forget everything and run. I like that one. I thought, it's either fight or flight in terms of fear and how we're going to deal with that. One of the things that really scares us to death is I've told the story of watching the movie Jaws when I was a kid and just being, mortified, being just kind of paralyzed with fear every day after that. And I lived in Tennessee. There was no ocean. So, but just the idea of what scares us. And so I looked up some things, and I've done this before because it's so enlightening to us. The things that we just worry and have anxiety about certain things. And one of which would be, put my glasses on here so I can see, the idea of, dying from a shark biting you, and so how many people do you think die of shark bite in the United States every year on average? What's the number of people? Because we worry. You'll hear people say, oh, sharks. Oh my gosh. Oh my, sharks. I'm so scared. And it's true. I get it. I get the reason why, but on average, one person in the United States dies of shark bite in each year. One person. All right. So these are some of the others I think that we really worry about, stuff like spiders. Some people, really, oh my gosh, it's a brown recluse, it's a black widow, it's whatever, these different spiders. I pulled up to my mailbox yesterday and there was one underneath, in a web that was, size of a quarter. I was like, goodness gracious, what a horrific looking spider. But in all actuality, the number is between 2 and 3 people a year. 2 to 3 people. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying those people are insignificant. I'm just saying we do a whole lot of worrying about something that kills only, of the 350 million, 400 million, however many people are in the United States, 2 to 3 on average per year. How about killer bees? Oh my goodness. I've lived, I was born in the 60s. I was born in the year of the summer of love. And so ever since then, they've been trying to scare us to death with everything in the world. Killer bees. How many people die of killer bees per year? 2 to 3. That's in the United States. That's what we're talking about, right? And we can go down the list. How about bears? I live in East Tennessee. That's where I grew up, and I live in Middle Tennessee now, but bears are just roaming right now through Gatlinburg. They're very prolific right now, I guess, because of maybe some of the flooding and stuff that went on in North Carolina. But bears, how many people die from less than 1 on average, right? It's a percentage, but less than 1. Person dies of bear attack. And you think about, that would include Alaska, that would include the Rockies, that would include the Smokies, everywhere, less than one person a year that dies from a bear attack. But we're mortified, we're afraid, really, really terrified of those kind of things. And so the others that are out there, now let's look at some of these numbers. And how about lightning? How many people die from a lightning strike per year in the United States? That number jumps to 20. So 20 people, still out of 400 million or whatever, 20 people die of a lightning strike. If we go and look at other numbers and compare them now, how about earthquakes? 360 people a year from earthquakes on average. Now, what they're doing is that would be, that there would be certain years where they have a higher number of that. But 360 people for earthquakes. And our friends from California know, it's a scary feeling when everything starts really shaking. But then we move into, how about plane crash? That rotates, that moves, kind of year by year, but on average between 350 and 575 people per year die of aviation related, crashes. Usually those are the smaller planes that they have trouble with. So, that's kind of, I think, some of the things that we're really afraid of. But then when I put it in perspective, the stuff that we really are afraid of, let's look at what we really should be afraid of, all right? What we should really have some fear and anxiety about, and maybe you do, but crime. 19,252 people on average die per year from crime, murder, in the United States. 19,252. If I look at, how about suicide? 48,000 people die of suicide every year. That's a 2020 number. So after COVID, that number's skyrocketed. So it's more than that on average. How about drugs? Self-inflicted drugs, like overdose per year. 112,000. 112,000. Now we said bears, less than 1. We said sharks, 1. Spiders, 2 to 3. Killer bees, 2 to 3. Drugs, 112,000 per year. How about car accidents? 42,514 per year on average. People who die in those. And then let's just put it in perspective. Disease. Heart disease, number 1 killer in the United States, 695,547. Almost 700,000 people per year of heart disease. And then cancer, 605,213. And those are things that more and more, diabetes is on that list, 103,000 per year, folks. Stroke, those numbers are 162,000. So health issues, those numbers are huge in terms of the things of getting sick in some way, shape, or form. So what do we do with that fear? Because it's the Bible is real clear to say things like fear not, in Isaiah 41, for I am with thee, right? Fear not, fear thou not, for I am with thee. And that's, somebody comes in for counseling and they say, I'm afraid. And I go, fear not. They're like, thanks, appreciate that information. All that help you just gave me, Chris. But God is trying to put it in perspective for us and say, hey, we shouldn't be having fear in our lives, anxiety. We shouldn't have to live day by day with worry and anxiety. And what you found ever since COVID is, and then so many of us at church have friends that are, agoraphobia has just gone through the roof. And, agoraphobia being afraid to leave your house. And Tusculum, the church that I started out with, the very first, church that I was a youth pastor at, back in the 90s, used to have a phobia group that met at their church. It was like a, group therapy kind of group that met there. And unfortunately, our youth used to do all kinds of stuff to torment them, make loud noises, set off the fire alarm, put smoke underneath the door with a smoke machine. And I mean, these people would freak out, and it's horrible. And I had nothing I could do about it, except to speak to them about it. But, just the idea of so many of us living with these phobias, these fears that are out there. So, the Bible being full, just imagine, Adam and Eve leaving what kind of, you think they were afraid when they had to leave the Garden of Eden? Fear of the unknown, what was outside, what life was going to be like. And then from there all the way up, Noah, Abraham, Lot, Isaac, Jacob and Esau, Joseph. I mean, it's just story after story, getting all the way to Daniel in the lion's den, Jonah, and all of these. But here in 2 Samuel 19 is a story of King David, and you would expect me to share David and Goliath. You would expect me to say, young man, young boy, standing up to a giant 9 feet 9 inches tall who was highly trained soldier, right? That would be the greatest, best example, whether Daniel in the lion's den and some of these others, right? But in all actuality, let's talk about David later on in life after he is, after Bathsheba and the issues with Uriah. And this is his son Absalom does a coup and wants to take over from his dad. He thinks he can be a better king. And so Absalom does an uprising. And so David, they defeat the army that's following David, defeats Absalom's army. And David says, don't kill Absalom, bring him to me. And yet David's number one general, Joab, decides, he comes riding along. Somebody tells him that Absalom is riding and gets stuck in a tree. His hair that he's well known for, this massive locks of hair that he has, the Bon Jovi hair, gets caught in a tree branch. And so he's stuck, his feet dangling. And Joab comes up, sees him, and actually has him killed. 3 javelins in the heart kind of deal, and kills him. And David is just beside himself with grief. And so he's mourning his son. He's upset. He's crying. He won't do anything. He won't speak to the army that's defeated Absalom's army or anything. And this is the story we find in 19:1. So 2 Samuel 19:1. It says, Joab was told, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom and for the whole army. The victory that day was turned into mourning because on that day the troops heard it said, the king is grieving for his son. The men stole into the city that day as men steal in who are ashamed when they flee from battle. The king covered his face and cried aloud, "Oh, my son Absalom, oh, Absalom, my son, my son." Both of those with exclamation marks. Then Joab went into the house to the king and said, "Today you have humiliated all your men who have just saved your life and the lives of your sons and daughters and the lives of your wives and concubines. You love those who hate you and hate those who love you. You have made it clear today that the commanders and their men mean nothing to you. I see that you would be pleased if Absalom were alive today and all of us were dead. Now, go out and encourage your men. I swear by the Lord that if you don't go out, not a man will be left with you by nightfall. This will be worse for you than all the calamities that have come on you from your youth till now." This is a general talking to the king. Does that sound right in your mind? It doesn't to me. It actually sounds like insubordination, like somebody that's unwilling to follow orders. And yet, what happens is you need to try to trace and what's motivated here. Is it just, oh, Joab's my friend and he's telling me the right thing to do? I don't think it's motivated by that at all. I think this is a junkyard dog that David's afraid of. It's his dog that's gotten loose and it's attacking everybody and it's as bloodthirsty as it's ever been. And David goes, this guy's out of control. He's going to kill me, take over. And it motivates David to do the following. So he says in verse 8, "So the king got up and took his seat in the gateway. When the men were told the king is sitting in the gateway, they all came before him. Meanwhile, the Israelites had fled to their homes." Okay, so David recognizes them and congratulates them and tells them, well done, and he does what Joab tells him to do. Joab didn't ask him. He didn't say, please, my kids were always, if I said, hey, go do this, go do that, they would always say, what's the magic word, Dad? And I would go, now? And they would go, no, what's the magic word? And they'd go, please, yeah. And they would go, usually go do it. And so here, Joab doesn't come and say, let me show you, let's look at a proof together. Let me write this on the board so that you can understand all the facts and you'll know that the best thing for you to do is to do this. He doesn't do that. He goes, get off your duff and go out there and tell the men they did a good job. Get out of this mourning thing that you got going on and go do this now! Exclamation mark. And the king goes, ooh, crossroads here. Because if I don't do this, if I stay in here, he's already killed my son. What's he going to do to me? And fear motivates him in this moment. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that is what prompted the actions of King David to go out and to congratulate his men on a victory over Absalom's coup, which is definitely a tough place to be. All right, so let's look at a couple of things. One, I started looking up the Biblical Counseling Center and to look at some of what it means, what fear means and worry and all that kind of stuff. And their definition is fear is a God-given emotion. It alerts us to danger. So if we are, I was invited in, when I was a co-op student with IBM in Atlanta, my roommates moved out because it was the end of their quarter and they were going home, and I didn't have any place to live, any roommates, and our lease was up, and I was on semesters at UT, and my boss at IBM and his wife said, hey, you can come live at our house for these last few weeks, and just come over on Sunday night, bring whatever you need, and we'll have dinner at such and such time, just come on over. And I went to their house, and it was dark. It was the winter time, and got dark, at like 5:30. So pitch dark, and I pull up to their house, live in a nice neighborhood, and I start walking up their driveway. And of course, I've never been there before. And their daughter, their older daughter, who was college age also, was visiting them, and she had a boxer pit bull mixed dog. And she had let him outside to run around and gone inside. And so as I walked up the driveway with a briefcase and a suitcase in one hand, I'm confronted with this dog in the dark going, giving me this number. We didn't have cell phones. So I'm sitting there and I go, what are my choices? And the one thing that I remembered, and this is, sometimes you need to listen to mom and dad and grandpa and grandma and all those people. But my dad said, don't ever turn your back on an aggressive dog, a dog that's growling at you, wanting to bite you. Don't turn your back on it. Just stand your ground. And so what I did was I was doing, like the big idiot that I am, is I just kind of was like standing my ground and going, hey there, big boy. Hi, puppy. How are you? And just stupid as I could be, but still trying to talk nicely to this vicious, dog that was about to attack me. And I just kind of kept walking sideways, and he walked sideways until we got to the door and I could reach over and press the doorbell. And he was still standing there on the porch with me going, wanting to bite me when they opened the door, and they're like, whatever, Mr. Whiskers, come on in the house, get in here, stop it, whatever. And, but just that idea of fear being the emotion that you feel when there's danger. And I definitely felt it that day. They said anxiety is what we feel when our body is responding to fear. It's what we feel in those moments. That anxiety, not knowing what's going to happen, worrying about the outcome. And then worry is the thought process that gives power to the object of our fear. So it's what we're thinking in our heads. Remember I said on Sunday that we talked about the pretend game, the what if game that goes through our heads when we're in a bit of a moment, when we're in a predicament, and we're thinking of these are the consequences. These are the things that are going to happen. And for some of us, those are the moments when you can really figure out if you're an optimist or a pessimist. Because Jill would be like, oh, this is a good thing. This is, for me, I'm always going, here's the 52 bad things that are about to happen right here in a row. I can show you. It's going to be this, and this, and this. And playing that game creates worry. It creates, somehow, in my life, they call it escalating if you're having a conflict. If you're upset because there's no toilet paper on the roll, and you come out and you say, hey, there was no toilet paper on the roll. And that turns into, we're getting a divorce over this. That's escalating. And I call it kind of de-escalating, and it's not in a good sense in terms of fear, because sometimes we take it from here and we go down about 100 levels going, we get from, hey, the economy is just turned bad to the world is ending. And, this is, we just get to that point where we're making a mountain out of a molehill at times. So that's their definition of those three. And then they give 4 principles on how we can address this. And so one of the things is, it says principle 1 is, my anxiety reveals what I value. So one of the things that we talk about is if you won the lottery, would that solve all your problems? Because for a lot of us, we'd go, man, if I just had all the money and I wouldn't have to worry anymore I'd have all that money and there wouldn't be anything to worry about. Except what? Downturn in the economy, my money's worth less now. Or I go out and buy stuff, a house or a boat or a car or whatever, and then all of a sudden, something is going to happen and I have to buy insurance now, and I have to watch security cameras, and I have to, have all of the, and I have to have this vicious dog that's out there with my stuff to guard it. And so I worry about somebody taking all of that away from me. If I've got a beach house, then I'm worried about the hurricanes that keep coming. If I've got a cabin up in the mountains, I didn't think I had to worry, but now I got to worry about flooding, right? That's going to happen in the mountains, or wild animals, or, forest fires, or those kind of things. And all of that breeds worry. So the idea that the more money that I have, the more stuff that I have, the happier I'll be, it just creates, the more stuff I have creates more worry. And that goes for my children too. Now that I have kids who have their own homes and have wives and just all this, and one day I will have grandkids, and how much worrying am I going to do? How afraid are my nerves going to get? And so we have to figure out, okay, so what do I value? Now, Matthew 6, if you turn there in the New Testament, Sermon on the Mount, Jesus speaking to all these people, and it's 6:19 is where he starts. And he says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So for us, again, one of my friends who had a downturn, got divorced, had money troubles, all of that, kind of did bankruptcy, got to the point of just lost almost everything. After 6 months or so, I talked to him on the phone, and he was just like, "Man, life is good." And I'm like, "How is life good?" I was expecting, well, I found Jesus in the midst of that. And he did. And that was absolutely, he found his hope in Jesus. But secondly, he said, "I don't have anything to worry about. I don't have anything. So what is there to worry about? Everything's up from here." And I was like, wow, what a perspective shift. But that's true in terms of where our treasure is. If our treasure's in and I can kind of look around at my life, and there's not much I can live without except my kids. My wife. Jill's over here. Did you hear it? I said that, and she goes, that kind of thing. By the way, I'm sitting here doing this Bible study. Sorry, I'm not meaning to move the camera here. This is what my wife got as a gift at school. Look at this. It's a candle, a scented candle that is Cosmic Brownie by Little Debbie's, right? And it does. Smells just like Cosmic, but only my wife would get a candle that, they know her too well, right? They do know Jill. So here we are. And so we're trying to figure out what we value, and that's our priorities, right? I need to shift my focus from what is temporal, what is something here earthly, to things that are eternal. I need to make sure that, I'm taken care of in terms of my salvation. I need to make sure that the fruit of the Spirit are evident in my life, that my spiritual gifts are active, the ones from Romans and 1st and 2nd Corinthians and Ephesians, that those spiritual gifts, fruit of the Spirit are Galatians 5:22, right? And so we're worrying about things that are eternal. We're worrying, and this is the cool part, and you'll see this in just a second, is I worry about those things. But there is a shift that happens, and I don't just worry about them for me. I worry about them now, and I shift it to others. I'm concerned with their salvation. I'm concerned with, do they have money for food and clothes? Do they have a place to stay in the midst of the pouring down rain outside, or when it's cold outside? And that shift really brings us peace, and it actually motivates us in a good way. It actually helps us to be tangibly active in the world. Making a difference. And it makes the community we live in a better place when we have that mindset. So the second principle is my anxiety reflects my view of God. And Tim Keller says, pastor in New York, famous pastor, he says, worry is not believing God will get it right. And he also says bitterness is believing God got it wrong. And so as we all deal with our friend Carmen Ford that passed away, in the midst of that, she's 39 years old, leaves behind a husband, Jimmy, and 2 kids, middle school, elementary school age. And, we asked that question that Tim just said, will God get it right? And then bitterness wells up in our hearts because we're like, God got that wrong. Why did he do that? And yet we know that God works for our good, right? We know that he is constantly, and again, I'll reiterate, what was the best thing for Carmen as a human being, an individual, was to go to heaven, to be in a perfect place. And we don't fault her for that in any way, shape, or form. We actually, rejoice that she had the hope and encouragement of life after death, that she had a place, to be absent from the bodies, to be at home with the Lord. And so this idea that, what's my view of God? What do I believe he's up to? What do I believe he's doing? And is he working things out? And of course, Jesus says, our heart of unbelief, that God is acting in a good way towards us. In our unbelief, is God working for our good? Even says at times we want to be in control of the outcomes. We don't want to have to sit and wait and wonder whether God is going to act or whether we want to do all that we can to ensure the outcomes, and that defeats the idea of faith. And so the answer for us is to keep our focus on faithfulness, trusting God in what we can't see. Just like we were standing yesterday and there was just such a nice breeze blowing, and you couldn't see it. We could see the effects of it in the leaves, but the breeze was blowing, and it was such a nice, refreshing thing in the midst of a hot day. The principle 3 is my anxiety is related to my trust level in God. And the answer is, are we going to trust him in the midst of our trials? Are we going to believe, that God is powerful enough? Do we believe, because Chris Caldwell says on a regular basis from the Bible, 3 different places I could tell you right now where it says God is the God of the impossible. With God, all things are possible. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, right? Is that, when Mary is standing there going, how am I going to have Jesus? How am I going to have a child? The angel speaking to her, Gabriel, says, with God, all things are possible. And so we have to believe that. We have to get to the point of where this is why our fear raises up, is because we are concerned that God does not have the power. And we're concerned that if he does have the power, that he won't act. And the problem with that is that, again, we only see right now in this moment, November 13th, 2024, and he has all the information from the creation of the earth until it is destroyed, the new heaven and new earth created. He knows everything going through our minds and in our hearts, not just ours, but all the people around us. He can see every country and the inner workings of all that. And for us, we're like, how? How does he do that? He's not human. This is the creator of the universe. This is God. And he took dirt and soil. That is Adam. That is that word, earth. And he breathed life into us. And we're just created. He's the creator. And he is working, molding, shaping us, all of those wonderful things, working out every path for us. And we have to have that faith and trust him, that idea of trust, that he will take care of us. And you know how I know that? This is the hard part. I've been a Christian since I was 11. Been a pastor for 32 years. And in hindsight, looking back, God has never let me down. And sometimes it took years for certain things to get worked out. Years. And we're like, I'm a McDonald's customer. I am a fast food culture. I want it done today, Lord. I want it fixed now. And God says, that's not in your best interest. That's not in your parents' best interest. That's not in your wife's best interest. That's not in your kids' best interest. It's not in the best interest of your country if I do it now. And sometimes what I have done, you can tell me if you're guilty of this or not. With my kids, I have bailed them out of situations where they were in a sling, where they were screwed up. And I have gone in and bailed them out because I didn't want to see them hurt. I didn't want to see them lose anything. I didn't want to see them struggle in that particular situation. So I went in and bailed them out of it. And the problem with that is they didn't learn the lesson that God wanted them to learn. The motivation. Maybe it wasn't necessarily a rock bottom moment, but it was a moment where God was teaching them something. And I did what I thought was best to control the outcomes that I wanted, because this is what I could see in this moment, in this situation. And God said, I've got the bigger picture here, and I needed them to be humbled in this moment so that then they would listen to me. And so for us, so difficult because we want to avoid conflict. We want to gravitate towards the things that feel good, the things that make us, happy. We don't want to deal with all of that conflict. And that's why we have, we repress it down or we avoid it, and all that kind of stuff and it's so difficult. The fourth principle is my anxiety is redirected best by compassionately serving others. And that's what I was talking about a minute ago, is that so many of us complain. And I did that in a newsletter a couple of weeks ago where I put actual complaints to a travel agency that customers had submitted, right? Like the one person that was upset that they were in India and the only thing they could find to eat was Indian food. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, that's a killer there, isn't it? And so we get inward focused on ourselves and hey, I'm upset because you're not taking care of me. And in reality, in every counseling session for folks, I always tell them to become other focused, because it makes you grateful, makes you thankful to God. You look at, if you're investing in somebody's life who's really broken, you go, wow, Lord, thank you that I didn't reach this level. Thank you, Lord, that this didn't happen to me, that I didn't make this decision. Or thank you, Lord, that I did, and then now you have put me in position to help somebody else through that same, really tragic situation that I had to walk through. And I can give them some guidance, maybe to miss some of those additional potholes at that point. So for us, when I look at a couple of verses, I want us to, the idea of, anxiety, that last part that we were just talking about. One of the things about going out and helping somebody else, is the idea that when we truly are, when fear takes hold and we have anxiety and worry in our lives, tends to make us paralyzed, tends to isolate us, tends to make us have a lot of self-doubt. And when we go and help other people, then we're active. We're not isolated. We have others. And remember the idea of where two or more gathered, there's Jesus, right? Matthew 18:18. And so here is this idea of us going out and make sure that we are not. Oh, sorry. Jill's pointing something out to me there. Sorry. Let's look at a couple of passages here, because I want to make sure that you hear some of these straight from Scripture, right? I read to you Isaiah 41:10, and then 1 John 4:18 says, there's no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. And a lot of folks have a real issue with that particular passage. And the reason is because fear still exists, right? And we're like, okay, I need perfect love to be able to drive this out. So how do I do that? And the idea is that for me and my relationship with my parents is that they created, when I was young, is that they created a situation where if I did something wrong, they told me what the rules were. And if I did something wrong, there were consequences. And they were very, hey, we're being faithful. We're being upfront with you. We're telling you consistent. We're going to tell you exactly what's going to happen. I'd go do something wrong, and then there was a punishment that came with it. And so there was a bit of fear in terms of, oh golly, I'm going to get a spanking, or I'm going to get timeout, or I'm going to get this taken away. I'm not going to get to go do these things, whatever it might be. And it created this atmosphere of fear. And, remember Proverbs, if we go to Proverbs 3, it talks about fear is the beginning of wisdom, right? Fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And so this idea of fear. But once I got to be 14, I grew 6 inches, the same height as my dad. We weighed similar amounts. And at that point, the fear went away. You're not going to put your hands on me anymore. And so by the time I'm in high school, you have to transition the idea of fear into love. I won't do these things now, not because you're going to have these consequences, these punishments or whatever, but actually I'm going to do them because I love you so much, right? We have to transition to that. It's not, so many of us in terms of our relationship with God, we're like so afraid of going to hell. We're not going to do these things. We're not going to do these things. Not going to do these things until the fear goes away. And when the fear goes away, then we go do what we want to do, right? And that's why I got the fireplace going in the background, and all that is my TV playing an app, right? But the idea is that we're afraid of sharks and spiders and killer bees, and we're afraid of bears, and we're afraid of this and that, all that kind of stuff. But today, very few people are afraid of hell. And yet it's real, and it's eternal, not just temporal, not just earthly, not just during our lifetime. And so for us, the idea of I have to get from fear to love. I'm going to obey Christ because he loved me and I love him. I wouldn't do that, right? I wouldn't do something wrong to hurt Jesus and my relationship with him. That's where we're all striving to get to, where that motivates us. A couple more here. So Second Timothy 1:7, God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, right? He's given us everything that we need. The Holy Spirit lives in us, and he says, all you have to do is pray in my name and believe it, and it'll be done. You can do the impossible. Jesus says those words, when I go, you will do even greater things than these. And so many denominations take that as just those 12 disciples. Well, the guy's sitting there listening, Judas is one of them. No. That is not one of the people that would do greater things than these. And so this is for all of us, is that, and it's not so that we can say, I am, the ruler of the universe. No, it's not that. It is so that we can accomplish God's purpose with power in the world. And then, the one that I heard just the other day when we were at the graveyard at the cemetery was Jill read the 23rd Psalm, and, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. And that's the best part. As I was an only child, and the one thing that I was really afraid of the most was the dark at night. Had nobody except mom and dad down the hallway. And I would lay there and just imagine all the things, the sharks swimming under my bed. Yeah, right. Monsters, all burglars, whatever it might be, bugs, and just the fear that just ushered up. But that says, don't let the fear get you. I am with you. I am with you. And everywhere you go, everywhere you are, I am there with you. Trust me that I am working for your good and protecting you. I am your shield. I'm your fortress. And we put on that armor of God from Ephesians 6, and we walk out into a broken world and we do his will. And that's the way to overcome the fear that is within us, is to actually, that's part of using our muscles that we've been exercising to go out and to see how they work. We practice to go out into the world, on a football field and play the games. And that's what we do, is we all, like a wave washing into church. We come in and we're broken and we're wrung out like a sponge, and then we soak it back up, we learn, and then we wash back out into the world, and then we try to accomplish what God has for us with the people that he puts in our path. That's how we overcome the fear, is then growing that relationship and that faith with Jesus Christ. God bless you. I hope you have a great evening, and thank you for joining us tonight, and God bless you.